Welcome to the Outliers podcast, celebrating the people, the skills, and the tools that create stories worth reading. A presentation of Outliers Writing University, where tomorrow's authors learn the craft.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series and our program, Get to Know. I'm your host, DP Lyle, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Kathleen Antrim.
Thanks, Doug. It is great to be here, and we have got such an amazing interview for you today. We have got Sandra Brown, who's now got, how many New York Times bestsellers do you have? 50, 60?
77.
Oh my God, 77 New York Times bestsellers. And you want to talk about
who's counting?
Yes, exactly. But, you want to talk about somebody who knows writing inside and out, and it's certainly Sandra. Welcome to Get to Know, Sandra. I really want to talk to you a little bit about writing. And as an author, how do you feel writing and becoming an author changed your life?
Oh my gosh. It was like all the lights came on. I had, dabbled in other fields and enjoyed them. And it wasn't until I was approaching 30 before I ever began writing. And that was because I'd gotten fired from my job in TV, which was a blessing. I was devastated at the time, but it really turned out to be, one of the blessings of my life. Well, major blessing of my life. And so I began, and once I had the courage to actually set up a card table with a typewriter and a stack of paper on it and actually started. Then I started writing with a frenzy. And I read a lot of books. I would encourage anyone who, wants to or aspires to do this to read, do your homework on basic plotting if you're writing fiction. Get to know the mechanics of it. And I did a lot of, I wrote a couple of manuscripts before I was advised to read these books. And I went back and I was told I had a good voice, but I needed to know how to structure a story. And so did my homework, and then it was just, I was like a, fire horse. I just wanted to charge ahead. And I got to about book 4. This is after I published the first 2, sold the first 2 within 13 days of each other. And then I had a 3rd, and then I had a 4th, and then I got to that 5th one. I was like, I don't have anything to write about. Like, wait, what happened? All these great ideas that have been flowing through my head for years. And, I had to then begin creating. And then every book since then, has been like pulling hen's teeth. It never gets easier. But that's how but it did, Kathleen, going back to your question, it really did change my life. I couldn't have foreseen all these years later sitting here and talking to y'all and talking about this career that, it really did. It took over my life, but it was something I never, even when I published the first few romances, I never saw this in my future to the extent that it has been part of my past and present and future.
Do you feel like that you were able to have some pretty amazing and extraordinary experiences because you became an author?
Oh, gosh, because you went on one of the USO trips, the one we took to Guantanamo. Who in the world would have ever thought? Only Anne Margaret, and the Dallas Cowboys cheerleaders went on USO tours. Bob Hope, so it was like I would never have imagined in my life. And I remember when I first got that call from Doug Preston inviting me or saying, we'd love for you to represent international thriller writers in the USO in Afghanistan. Well, actually, he said it'll be somewhere in the Middle East, but we don't know where. And it wound up being at Afghanistan at the height of the war. And but it was an experience that I could never have dreamed of. And also, the entire time I was there, I was thinking, what an opportunity that I had been afforded when hundreds of thousands of Americans would have loved to have had that opportunity. And mine came through, writing suspense novels. And fortunately, a lot of service members had been seen reading them. So that was the cause for me, the invitation that I received there. And then the same when we went to Guantanamo. They were both just incredible experiences. And when I tell people, I don't exactly fit the profile of, the combat soldier. And so when I tell people, oh yeah, I flew in Blackhawks, we flew in C-130s and all of those big transport planes and everything. And people are just astounded. But it was difficult, but I would not trade those 10 days for anything.
Yeah, it's really amazing. So
when you talk about pulling hen's teeth to get your stories and all that going, your stories always have just such incredible characters in them. Some of them larger than life, and some of them down and dirtier than life, and everything in between. So when you are thinking of an idea, when you're coming up with an idea, do you start with a character or two? Do you start with a plot element? Do you start with something like, or both? Or how does your process, what's that spark that says, this is a story I can run with?
Okay. With every book, there's been a different origin. It can be, I remember I wrote a book called Hello Darkness, because I was driving home from my office one afternoon and I was playing my CD, Simon and Garfunkel classic hits, and Hello Darkness came on. And I thought, oh, what a title.
Yes.
So then it was like, what can it be? And so she was a radio hostess like Delilah, who had the midnight shift, so to speak. So started with that. So even something like a song can inspire an idea, a storyline, but a lot of it is a character. Wrote a book. It was my first crossover from strictly romance into more mystery and suspense. And that was my first standalone, where it was a part of a group or, a series of books. And it was called Slow Heat in Heaven. And I started with the character of Cash Boudreaux. I just thought that was a fascinating name that just sprang into my mind. And I read a book on the Cajun culture and set about, writing a story. And it was very popular, but it still is. I get a lot of people bringing their original copy to book signings because it was what started them reading me. So that started with a character. Other times it's something that's very topical at the time, a controversy or, something as recently as Out of Nowhere. That was only 2 books ago, I think. And it was tragically, we had that horrible shooting in Uvalde, Texas, the school shooting, which is, that is still ongoing in terms of resolving all the points about it. But it was just so devastating. I know the national coverage was widespread, but we had it in Texas for a lot longer than the rest of the country, of course. And I thought, how do these parents get up in the morning after having lost their child? So I thought, do I dare want to write about that? But I bounced it off my editor, and she said, well, I would trust you to handle it with the grace and the sensitivity that it would, and I said, well, it won't even be so much about the shooting. The shooting occurs in the first chapter, but thereafter it's about the survivors' recovery from it, or trying to. They're striving to recover from it. So that was the focus of the story, not the shooting itself. But so it can be, as I say, it can be a news story, something that's going on in our world that I think is worth a look from maybe a different perspective, a different angle.
So when you're thinking about something like that, do you have a process you go through is it a specific process, or just kind of, just time with the idea? Talk to us about that.
Daydreaming is a lot of just staring out the window and, doing this and saying, I know there's a story in here. I've just got to find it. And I used the word create earlier, but I never really feel like I create anything. I feel like there's that story in a parallel, universe, and it's up to me to excavate it. It's up to me to find it and pull it out and put it on paper. And Doug triggered something I wanted to say too, that he said, when do you have a story? And that's what I call the aha moment. And I can even have scenes played out in my head. And I would think, yeah, that'd be a good scene for right in the middle of the book. It would kind of flip things. And I'll have conversations between the characters going on in my head. And I'll say, I know there's a story here, but what's the thread? And the thread is the one thing that I know that the reader doesn't. And when I get the answer to that, when that finally opens up for me, it's like, aha, that's why I'm telling this story. And I'd kind of introduce the questions that I want the reader to be subliminally asking themselves, and whatever the first question is the last question that I answer. And that's the reason the story was worth telling. So, yeah, but and sometimes that comes fairly quickly. I usually get some kind of idea of where it's going. I don't know how I'm going to get there, but and I still don't when I begin. But I do know what I know that the reader doesn't.
We were talking about Michelangelo before we went live for the interview, and I've heard it said that he would look at a piece of marble, much like you're looking at your story, and know that the image is in there, and he would just be taking off the marble to expose the image that it was meant to be. And your process seems very similar, quite frankly.
Yeah. Well, and people say, where do you get your characters? I don't know. If I knew that, that's what I'd sell. I wouldn't sit here every day till my butt got sore. But writing about him, I would just say, oh, he came from here, but they do populate my head. And they become so real to me, and a question I'm frequently asked is, well, it just left me. Who do you see portraying a character? And I go, nobody. Or it'd be, which actor did you envision? And I'll go, nobody. I see my characters as them. And it's always difficult. The books that I've had turned into films, always difficult to actually see someone assuming the character that I have in my mind, that I see. But they're very real people to me. I have a confession. I had a imaginary friend when I was a little girl, kind of schizophrenic, but I don't remember Charlotte, but my mother told me, we don't even know where you got that name. We didn't know anybody named Charlotte, but I had Charlotte with me constantly and would talk to her, dress her, bathe her, all of this and pantomime. And then she vanished, but as I say, I don't remember that, but I can relate to it because I can, my characters are so real. I hear them talking. I see what they're doing. I envision them as though they're performing it for me. And when they walk into a scene, I describe what I see them walking into. So it's a little bit schizophrenic.
That brings up a question. In Texas, you have, having lived there, you have Colt and Tex and Slim and Tommy Earl and all that. How important are names to your characters? And how do you come up with those?
Oh, well, I have all my friends collecting names. If you hear of a great name, save it for me. And some have come from
I do the same thing, yes.
And then I get the baptism thing from our church and see all the babies' names, which are contemporary. And I've used the phone book looking for a last name in particular. And then I try to fit the characters, of course, to the character, but also to the other names I'm using so that there's no conflict. And it wasn't until I finished Bloodlust and started the book that I'm writing now. And I had Beth in one and Brett in another. So I'll find myself writing the book that the heroine's name is Brett. And so I'm sometimes taking Beth and I go, no, not Beth. It's Brett.
Have you ever had a character change names halfway through because you learned who they were better and you had a better name?
I had a sex change, gender change. It was supposed to be the father and the son who were and the hero who were at loggerheads. And every scene with them was just flat. I mean, the father's name was Jonas. And they just didn't spark. They should have been, all of this tension and everything and snarky comments and nothing was happening. And I got into about chapter 10 and woke up in the middle of the night and I go, it's his mother. So Jonas became Jody. And I went back to the beginning and all of their scenes then just popped. It was like it needed that male-female chemistry. In their case, a bad chemistry. He was not the favored son. And so that was my most drastic time that I've changed names. But yeah, I have a couple of times where I got a few chapters in, thought, I don't like her name. It doesn't fit.
Right. I've even finished the first draft. I write fast, then go back and edit. And I go back, I say, okay, I'm ready to start editing. I go back to chapter 1 and, I said, who the hell is Martha?
Yeah.
Because Martha became Betsy halfway through the story.
Yeah.
Who the hell is Martha?
You had to do a lot of finding and
replace.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Bloodlust.
Yes.
So there we go. What a great cover.
Thank you. I had a
What
lot of
was
input.
about this?
I had a lot of input on it, and I was very well pleased with how they We did a lot of cut and paste. I would say, I like this. I don't like that combination. I want it to really pop. And there was a cover very similar to this, but just had bloodlust and a smaller font of my name. And on another cover that I didn't like it at all, the color combination, and forgive me for looking at it as I'm talking about it.
Yeah, no.
But they had bloodlust spelled out like that, and that, like it had been finger painted at blood. And I said, let's put that on this. And it just, I said, that's it. That's it. Yeah. But I love the way they did the reflection.
Yes.
Yes.
And I just think it's a very arresting cover. So I'm glad you like it.
Oh yeah. I think it'd get you. Well, tell us about this? Where did this story come from? And give us a little bit about it. So,
Okay. In Blood Moon, which was the book preceding this one,
Which
there
is
was a
fantastic.
secondary character of Mitch Haskell. He was the hero, John's best friend, and they had worked together as detectives. Mitch was now an undercover DEA agent, and but he popped up to help John in some of the most pivotal scenes in the book. And they had a real kind of a bromance relationship, a really close tie relationship. And I loved that. And John was very serious. Mitch was always wisecracking, and he had in Blood Moon, he had this big Fu Manchu mustache because he was passing himself, he was working undercover. So I just loved the character. He always came in and kind of provided a little bit of comedic relief, and yet he was dead serious. You did not want to mess with Mitch. And I couldn't let him go. I fell in love, and I just thought he needs his own story. So Bloodlust takes up 2 years after the ending of Blood Moon. And Mitch's life in the interim has been turned upside down. And he's in a bad way, in a bad place. And so that's where Bloodlust starts. And it's a revenge plot. He is out to get the bad guy. And so it unfolds from there. And I kind of let Mitch and what's her name? Dylan take over and figure it out, So often, scene to scene, I have no idea what's going to happen next. But that's part of the fun, isn't it? I mean, don't you feel that way when it kind of comes out of you organically, and the characters are guiding you rather than the other way around. And so that's why I love writing fiction, is because as long as it's within the realm of possibility, every single scene should be somewhat of a surprise, or it should be a turning point, or it should be something has to happen that propels, the story forward. And I don't always know. There are days when I go without knowing what's going to happen next, and I just go back to the chapters I've done and rewrite, because I do a lot of rewriting.
Well, it's all those little mini aha moments that you talked about earlier. You write, you get 10 chapters into it, and you say, okay,
something's got to happen.
Something's got to happen. If I written myself in the corner here, let me think about this. And suddenly you're driving down the road, drinking a Starbucks. It's like, oh, now I got it. Yeah, I love that.
It kind of sometimes, when you're not thinking about it, the knot will just come undone.
Right.
And it's like, why didn't I see that? That was so easy. But it wasn't, it might have taken days.
Right. Do you keep pencil and paper near you or next to you at night so that you don't lose an idea?
I very rarely wake up in the night. I do have sleeping issues, but I take something for it that keep me asleep. So I don't ever, but when I wake up, I realize something is unfold, it's
Yeah.
open. And then I'll think, oh, why? But then other times it's just when I'm thinking about something else entirely, be in the middle of a TV show or be in the middle of another book and go, that's it. And then I'll jump up and grab that pad and write it down. Sometimes I even go to the computer direct and just, do it very quickly, just the bullet points of what I've just thought of so I don't forget them.
Yeah, absolutely. If you had one piece of advice to give to Sandra Brown when she was first starting out, what would it be?
Probably not to be too hard on myself. I'm less hard on myself than I was then, but my circumstances were entirely different. I'm a single woman now. I had preschoolers at that time underfoot. And so when they got into all-day kindergarten, it was just like, it was such a relief because I could drop them off and then I had till 2:30 or 3:30 in the afternoon, to get to the school. And then I had to be mom. It was a soccer mom, ballet mom, choir mom, all of these activities. I was the chauffeur and had to be, I had to be that. And I loved it. It wasn't always a hot dinner on the kitchen table. It was in a restaurant somewhere, but that was fine with them too. They didn't know any difference, so they didn't mind. And they grew up quite well. If I do brag on them, they're great. And they're totally supportive of me now. They're very protective of me. They're kind and sweet, and they love being with me. I mean, we have a great time. I really was glad when they became adult enough to be friends too, and I wasn't always mom, but when they need mom, they come to mom. So that never goes away, and God willing, it ever will.
That's
So, but I think that at that point in time, a lot of my stress was self-imposed. Or self-induced because I had to wear so many different hats at one time. Another difference is that then I didn't have all the business to do. I could never have written all those 45 romances before I ever wrote a suspense novel. I could never have done that. I wrote 45 in 9 years. And I could never have done that if I'd had all the social media to do, all of the busyness that comes from having sold 45 books and still counting. And so a lot of the publishing, I don't want to say intrusive because it's my bread and butter, but to an extent, it often takes time away from the writing part.
Oh, absolutely.
And I love the writing part a whole lot better than I love that part.
Exactly. Don't we all?
Well, Sandra, tell our viewers, where they can find more about you, where they can get your books. And I highly recommend you go back to the first one and read them from there because also 7. Oh my gosh. I mean, they're just
Well, I have to consult my assistant here. I'm on, you have it?
Yeah.
I'm on, recently on TikTok. It's been about a year now that I've been on TikTok. I finally had to surrender. And it's official Sandra Brown. Yeah. Official Sandra Brown because there are a lot of Sandra Browns and a lot of people that have TikTok about me that aren't me, but has to be official Sandra Brown. I'm on Instagram at author Sandra Brown, or is it Sandra Brown?
Sandra Brown.
Sandra Brown. See how well I know all of this? Sandra Brown.
It's a lot. There's a lot.
Author is on Instagram, and then sandrabrown.com is Facebook. So, or what is no
Sandra Brown.
Sandra Brown. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I know they can get your books anywhere books are sold, quite frankly. And thank you.
They'll be our kiosk with the bestseller. Yeah.
Oh, we love having you on. You're phenomenal. Thank you so very, very much. Can't wait till we can do it again.
You continue to invite me, and I'm always thrilled. Thank you.
Oh, we love having you.
Thank you.
And you have the most beautiful smile. You brighten up the whole room and brighten up our Zoom. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, both of you be well.
You too, and we greatly appreciate you being here. We don't get to see you face to face often enough like we used to. So, yeah, but it's good, and we do want to have you back with the next book. So let us keep him in the loop. Yeah.
They'll be safe.
All right. Until then, that wraps up this episode of Get to Know here on the Outliers YouTube channel and podcast series. And we are so grateful that Sandra spent time with us. And as you know, we will be back with other author interviews before too long. And until then, keep reading, keep writing, keep having fun, and try not to get caught.
The Outliers Podcast is a copyrighted presentation of Outliers Writing University. All rights reserved. Learn more at outlierswritinguniversity.com.